All right. Good morning, good evening to everyone attending the PhilProCon 2021. JR here. I'm here with Ray Villanueva and Kevin Gabayan, our PhilPro alumni. You are in the breakout session for opportunities and challenges with starting a business in the Philippines. This session was also previously titled "The Mistakes We Made When Starting a Business in the Philippines." So some of the presentations we may have also will cover that. The agenda today is we'll just go introduce ourselves, talk a little bit about our business, and then go over some of the our learnings with our companies in the Philippines. And then we'll have a just a question and answer section, which I think is just very casual and you know, PhilPro, Filipino Young Leaders Program. We're here to be just support for other young professionals, and I think this is a great opportunity for us to just chat. We can learn from you guys, you can learn from us, and it'll be good. So we're just gonna jump right in and get started. We're just gonna go left to right. And Ray, if you wanna take it away, introduce yourself and your company, and go for it.
Okay, great. Thank you, JR, and thank you all for joining us this morning, evening, whatever time it is. My name is Ray Villanueva. I'm the co-founder of Kawayan Collective, bamboo treatment center in the Philippines. I was a part of batch 7, 2017 for PhilPro. And I was just going to talk a little bit about Kawayan Collective, how we started, and how it's going. And then I think maybe I have lots of lessons learned, mistakes that I can kind of go through a little bit later if it makes sense. But so the story of Kawayan Collective starts with actually the PhilPro Immersion Program in 2017. PhilPro Immersion Program pairs you up with other leaders and I guess organizations that are in your same field. So I'm an architect and really interested in bamboo. And so I was able to meet the leaders of Base Bahay Foundation. Base Bahay Foundation is doing social housing all across the country using bamboo. They're using a technology that is very popular in South America and has actually roots here in the Philippines as well, that uses bamboo as the internal frame of the structure. So when I met Base Bahay and learned about their mission, it kind of paled in comparison to anything that I was doing in the US. I was working for a big firm, and I had to find a way to be a part of their mission. Some of the main reasons why is because construction in the Philippines is based on unsuitable Western standards, and bamboo is definitely a way to be more sustainable and a way to celebrate the culture and traditions of the Philippines. So the timing was right, luckily as well, to move to the Philippines. So I somehow convinced my wife, and we have 2 kids, that it was a good time to move to the Philippines, and mainly not only for the business, but also to show our kids that what it means to be Filipino from a young age, and so that they can be proud to be Filipino, which is, I think, very important. So about a year later, I pitched to Luis and Maricen, the leaders of Base Bahay, to start a treatment facility in Negros Oriental and to join their mission. And so 18 months later, after meeting them in that initial photo, we started Kawayan Collective in Negros Oriental. And we joined their mission to elevate bamboo and to build better homes for every Filipino. And so this is our business. It's essentially a bamboo lumberyard where we are in Mayantubig, Darwin, which is on Negros Oriental. And what we do is we work with farmers in the mountains to harvest bamboo correctly. And also then we bring it to our facility and treat it. And then we distribute it. So we supply Base Bahay projects. Every Base Bahay house needs 100 poles. And Base Bahay's mission is to build 10,000 homes in the next 5 years. So that's 1 million bamboo poles that are needed, which is an amazing market opportunity and has really kickstarted the bamboo industry in our province. So we've also expanded. First, we started with just the whole bamboo columns. You'll see a lot of it behind me. the round bamboo, but we also make panels and specialized products. And how it's going right now, we recently got a grant from the Department of Science and Technology, so we're establishing a bamboo learning center. We're doing a lot of product development and equipment upgrade. To further root our business in the community, we're converting to a cooperative and also starting to build some bamboo model houses with base Baha'i. So that's basically Kawayan Collective, and these are some shots of our most recent completed project, a bamboo model house here with my kids on the stairs, and some finished shots. And yeah, we just moved in actually on Friday. We're living in the model house for now. Very much like Arrested Development, but yeah, so that's kind of the direction we're heading, and we're very excited to be able to contribute to this more sustainable solution of building in the Philippines. So with that, I'll hand it over to JR and Kevin.
Great, thanks, Ray. Were you going to go over the like the different challenges and stuff, or
Sure.
Do we want to circle back?
I could do that now, or I could circle back. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, go for it, man. Go for it. Yeah.
Okay.
Your
Cool.
preference. Your preference.
All right, let's do it now, so I can.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
But it's a great update on you guys have done some awesome stuff, man. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, so lessons learned. I've prepared. I think I'm just going to be talking over this slide, but I think when we first started Kawayan Collective, of course, you have a lot of relatives and parents and friends sharing the disaster stories and kind of preparing you for the worst. And like, for example, my dad is always saying like not to trust Filipinos with money. And actually, we've had friends who've also had experience with staff stealing from their company and having to go to court. And yeah, and it actually happened to us too. Somebody stole like $200 from our cash box. And I guess our solution is always to have great communication. So actually, every week we meet with the whole team. We have about 25 regular staff and about 45 total with contract workers. So we meet every week to discuss our lessons learned and to help avoid anything catastrophic and to make it easy to talk about things rather than like hold things in. I think it's our strongest tool. We talk about our appreciations first. We start a meeting with thank yous and we end with our hopes and dreams. So it's great for active communication. And so when someone stole money from the company, we kind of further deep dived into that communication, and we share our financial statements with everyone because at that time it was very early in our existence, and so we showed to them like we're losing money, and so as a new business, we're losing money, we're barely making anything. So when you steal money from us, you steal from everyone else. So I think that really hit home, and I guess we just keep that weekly meeting going to also learn from their needs. We started a cash advance system where they can request advances, and so I think it's really working well. We haven't had any problems since then. And then the other lessons learned from I guess, we reframe mistakes into lessons learned because I guess it's all how you think about the mistake. But another challenge was the assumption that government is very difficult to deal with. And in general, it's really frustrating to living here. We're still in all cash system, so it's so time consuming to go to the bank, and also the paper trail is definitely alive and well here. Not everything is paperless yet, so getting a business permit is really a big chore every month. So yeah, I think, but the whole time that we've been here, we've only been asked for a bribe once from our local Bureau of Plant Industry. It was when we were trying to export some bamboo. And the way we got around it was just asking for a receipt. And of course, there was no receipt for the bribe. And he hasn't asked for it since. So hopefully he doesn't, and we don't run into any more of that. But I guess on the other side of that, I'd like to also say the positive side, where government organizations like the Department of Science and Technology and the Department of Trade and Industry have been super helpful from the start. The DTI, when we first arrived, really helped us mobilize all the farmers and all the bamboo craftsmen and help us find our location. And they're trying to work with us with our equipment to have a shared service facility. And then most recently, I think I mentioned in my presentation earlier that we recently got a grant and aid for about double of our startup costs from the Department of Science and Technology. It was actually funny. We were trying to go for a loan for a certain amount, and we were so new that our loan got denied because we don't have enough data to prove that we're generating income. So that application was for like 500,000 pesos. And instead, our local DOST provincial, or I guess, yeah, provincial director, he found a way to get us a grant for 2.5 million pesos. So it's pretty funny, you get denied for the 500,000, but then you're awarded 2.5 million. So it's really cool to see people rally around your cause if it's a good one, and just help you out. So we've seen the positives and negatives, and I think those are our primary lessons learned about doing business in the Philippines. But I'd love to hear questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Ray. I think we're all gonna have very similar experiences, right? You mentioned, something with some different, the communication with the culture, transparency, yes, having a good mindset, government operations, collaborations, and like who you partner with, right? So all of that it sounds like you went through all the gamut, yeah, of that, and I'm sure Kevin and myself for sure have gone through that, right? Okay, cool. So we're doing the questions at the end of our 3 presentations, so please hold on to those. So we're just going to go left to right, so I guess it'll be my turn. I'll go ahead and share screen. And please do prepare your questions, because I think it's the most fun part of us being able to collaborate here. Okay, can you guys see my screen? Ryan, can you guys see my screen? Just checking.
Looks good.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Kevin. All right, great. So Panalo.co, my name is JR Calanoc. I'm Filipro Batch 1. Panalo, wait a second. This is not, wait. Okay. JR Calanoc with Panalo.co. Again, I'm Filipro Batch 1. Seems like a really long time ago, but similar to Ryan, my business did start after visiting the Philippines and seeing the amazing opportunities that was there. So Panalo is a website software company. We do user experience graphic design, software development, online marketing, and SEO. We've been in business about 8 years now since our Filipro trip, and we've done a lot of collaborations with teams in the Philippines and our office here in San Francisco. About 2 years ago, being in the software business, we decided to now start a co-working space called Dynamic Co. We've recently just opened and launched here in San Francisco, again in Union Square. The goal is, we're building software. We're working with American companies. We're working with software developers in the Philippines. If we can create a place where Phil Amps can connect and collaborate. I think it's one of the first few collaboration spaces of this size in the U.S. So we're excited to get things going here for Dynamic Co space. So that's my background, software and the co-working space. A little bit about me. 2 kids, there's the wife, 2 kids. It's like the best adventure ever in life. And then I like motorcycles and airplanes. And then So the things I wish I knew when I started the business. I'll go through this pretty quickly. You can't do it on your own. You think that you can do everything right off the bat when you're starting your business, but it becomes very clear that you do have to make sure that you hire the right people. Um, with Ray's story about people stealing and things like that, it's just it gets a little scary, right? So you definitely want to make sure you go through the right process about hiring the right people. Again, same theme. Over communication is a requirement for us because we're an outsourcing company. The regular communication is not enough because a lot gets lost in translation, right? When we started, Zoom wasn't a thing yet. We were like on Facebook and Skype, so it was more difficult to communicate. But if you focused on over communicating with the team, especially in an overseas team, that was a big factor. Something that really came out lately is the mental health and work-life balance of our agents in the Philippines. So we have about 65 employees in the Philippines, and they range in age. They're fairly young, right? Range in ages from early 20s to maybe late 30s. And you see, with the stress of work, the stress. Oops, that's not good. With work stress, with the pandemic going crazy, with the schedule that hiring teams in the Philippines entails, because they have to be up U.S. hours, right? It's very important to keep the work-life balance as much as possible, healthy, and then also pay attention to the mental health of your team when people are getting stressed out. Provide ways to cope for that, and then especially as a business owner, you have to really pay attention, because starting your own business is a little more stressful than you think. A lot of businesses a lot of folks will see businesses, their end result, right? Wow, these guys are doing great. Oh, what an amazing product, but you didn't see the 6 years of craziness that came before that, right? So it's definitely a little bit of stress, but I think being in the right mind frame, especially with working in the Philippines and overseas and outsourcing, that's really important. Another thing, this was also touched upon. Operations is just as important as sales. Being an owner of a company, of course, you have to get clients and do marketing and do sales. But if your operations doesn't keep up with your sales, and the whole house just comes crumbling down, right? So operations also is just as important. It also goes back to making sure you have the right processes and you're hiring the right people. So that was kind of the presentation I had ready for the lessons learned. For best practices, I'll go through this pretty quickly in starting a business in the Philippines. When hiring companies in the Philippines or outsourcing in the Philippines, or starting a business in the Philippines, it's really important to find the right outsourcing or find the right partner, because there are a lot of options. We have a great workforce in the Philippines, very smart, lots of talented folks in tech, but you're making a decision based on limited information, especially if you're based in the US. And there's also a recent shift to quantity of engagement from quantity to quality, right? So you really want to find the right partners, and it's difficult to find the right partners, especially when you're in the States. Or international, connecting with the Philippines. I think some of the most important stuff, and I'm going through this quickly, is first you have to understand what kind of business you have and what kind of tasks do you want to outsource or hire in the Philippines, right? Are you hiring? You can either outsource easily taught tasks or specialized tasks, or other tasks that you would have to hire for. You want to understand what are the things that you do. What do you need to get done that you're not so great at? What do you want to do more of? And so you can really figure out what to delegate when building a team internationally. So that was also very much of a challenge, right? Do we hire more developers? Do we hire more graphic designers? Do we hire more project managers? Right. So you really have to figure out what your current team can do really well before building the team internationally. I usually go with a checklist of folks. Have that. Look at the reputation, the scope, how fast do they do projects, experience and skill level. And when we hire folks, we do a full-on interview, a couple stages, video conferencing, and just like you would hire somebody here in the U.S. And then lastly, to keep the presentation short, The major learnings, I think, when hiring or starting a business in the Philippines, if you're based here or internationally, is you have to invest in time up front. You have to record all your processes. You have to shadow the team, and you have, again, over communicate and give feedback to the team. Communicate regularly. Set frequent updates. Be clear in communications. And then operations, right? You want to have the right documentation and tools. So you want to give access needed to make providers successful. So Drive, Box, GitHub, things like that, repositories. So you want to have a system specific for that. And of course, as any business, you want to really set clear goals with the people that, with the team that you're building. Set up your KPIs, and you want to track regularly because you want to make sure that you're on track. And if you're not, why or why not? But communicating that with an international team consistently has been the key to really being able to stay on top of business. And I will stop there for my tips and tricks of starting a business in the Philippines. So again, JR with Panalo and Dynamico. So I will now hand over to Kevin Gabayan. Kevin, if you introduce yourself and give us a little bit of background of your business and your best practices.
Thank you, JR. And it's great to be able to, learn from the experiences of both of you today. My name is Kevin Gabayan, CEO, co-founder of Plentina. Plentina is a pay leader for emerging markets. I will share my screen and pull up a deck here. So yeah, Plentina is a startup that I built, with my co-founder Earl Valencia. Earl and I were classmates at Stanford Graduate School about 15 years ago. We met because we got all the Filipino graduate students together for regular dinners. It was just 5 of us that got together for regular dinners. There were less than 10 of us in the entire school, but we challenged each other. How can we serve the Philippines? Over dinners, we just dream of, a Philippines that was no longer considered a developing country and just, world-class everything. And, what would need to be done in order to make that happen. And so, we graduated a long time ago. We've kept in touch quite a bit. We've continued those dinners, and we continue to challenge each other. How can we do this? And we talk for years, over a decade about, it's plenty of great ideas. And then one day it was time to quit our jobs and do it. So here we are. So, since then I had left Stanford while being a computer vision researcher at NASA Ames. Joined Bump Technologies as our lead data scientist, and we pivoted into photos because that's what everyone was bumping. There was that app where you bump phones together to exchange contact information, and Google acquired us to build Google Photos. So my patents come from Bump Technologies, Google Photo Sharing, Android Activity Recognition. I've always been passionate about driving better outcomes in the Philippines and other emerging markets. Founded a team at Google focused on emerging market credit. And in 2019, it was time to quit and take a crack at a new angle, taking a crack at an external startup with Earl, and join forces to see what we can do. So, and then Earl did his engineering at Boston University at Cornell, and then did his master's at Stanford. Left to be VP of Innovation at Smart Communications, everyone's favorite telco in the Philippines. And then went back to the United States, led data partnerships at Bridgewater, and was managing director of digital transformation at Charles Schwab in San Francisco. And then San Francisco, we continued our dinners, and we just decided to execute on this plan to make financial services more accessible to people in the Philippines. So yeah, we're pay later for emerging markets. In the Philippines, for instance, it doesn't really matter whether you are low on privilege or high on privilege. In the Philippines, credit access is really hard to get. So in order to ideate for Plentina, we hit the streets, we talked to hundreds of people on the street, just asked them about their financial situation, what can we do to help them out and help them achieve their dreams that they had 5 years out. And so we met people like Sorry store owners that were borrowing over 20% monthly interest from 5-6 lenders in order to buy inventory for their stores. We also met responsible college graduates that were real estate managers, but they still couldn't qualify for credit, even though they were the ones that were lending money to friends and family informally. And then also on the high ends, my own co-founder, Earl Valencia, who when he was VP of Innovation at Smart Communications, walked into a bank and got rejected for his credit card application because he was too immature in the credit history as well. So it didn't really matter who it was. In this country of 110 million people, only 2% have access to credit cards. And only about 20%, now 30% of the Filipino population, adult population, is included in the National Credit Bureau. And so there's so much more opportunity for us to give more people access to capital when they need it. And it's a great irony that in the West, at the same time, buy now, pay later is innovating on the credit model with companies like Affirm, Klarna, Afterpay, QuadPay, generating this market value of over $80 billion. And we just wish that we could just drop something like that in the Philippines, but it's not as easy, as Ray and JR knows, taking a regular business, a business model that you would be comfortable with in the West and just putting it in the Philippines because it just doesn't work the same way. So in the Philippines, you can't go to a website, punch in your social security number, and expect the website to be able to run a hard credit check on you because credit infrastructure has still a ways to go to covering people. And also, if you offered an API, a piece of software that a merchant would be able to sell goods on, online to a merchant in the Philippines, then merchants typically don't have tech teams in the Philippines in order to integrate something like that, where they could sell on scale, online. And so we're just making it work, doing what we have to do in order to make pay later credit work for merchants in the Philippines, leveraging partner data. So we can help merchants be able to sell more goods to their customers by leveraging data sources like their loyalty programs in order to sell on credit. And then also we make it so that their merchants don't need tech teams because we are working with their existing legacy technologies in order to sell on credit. So today, the MVP for Plentina, our first product, it's an app. You can get it on the Play Store. It's a pay later service so that large scale merchants can sell on credit to the over 90% of consumers in the Philippines that don't have access to a credit card. And so it's a win-win-win here. So merchants gets to sell more stuff to consumers. Consumers get access to the goods that they need when it's either inconvenient for them to handle cash or they're just shy of cash that they need in order to make their livelihood and continue their livelihood there. And we can make a business out of it. So we're excited about serving these customers. As mentioned, over 15 years ago that we met at Stanford with these experiences. Rockstar advisors on our board here that have built companies and organizations that have lent to over billions of people in emerging markets. So we turn loyalty programs and mobile data into credit scores so that we can de-risk consumers using our app, using our data partnerships with merchants, so I can build machine learning models that predict the risk of lending to these consumers and measuring the conversions and repayments. And so this is an actual in-store advertisement for Plentina in Isitan supermarket. You can walk in, you can see the sardines behind the pay later sticker for Plentina there, which is great. But yeah, merchants don't need a tech team to sell with Plentina. when we can work with their existing account systems to disperse. And so far, we've celebrated our 100,000th download of the app in September, and we've also celebrated the 120,000th download of the app in September as well. So we're excited about this growth. And average 4.6 stars on the Google Play Store, Net Promoter Score of plus 77. People are delighted with how fast and convenient the disbursement can be, and how they've been able to ladder up, starting small with loans that are as affordable as paying off 100 pesos up to currently up to 3,000 pesos. Just added a bunch of e-commerce merchants to this as well. And yeah, these are more in-store banners there. We just had National Bookstore banners up in the last week as well. So if you're walking around the malls, then check us out at some of these stores. And we started off with 7-Eleven Philippines as our initial partnership. Smart Communications was our next one, followed by AirAsia and Agoda. And then what followed suit were a number of other brands and merchants here. So yeah, everyone's favorite hamburger and spaghetti is in there. Pure Gold as a national grocery, Red Ribbon. Now you can get McDonald's in there. Kim Store, National Bookstore. We just launched Lazada and Zalora in the last month, and so people really love those, especially during the pandemic. And then you can also get gaming pins as well. So with Razer, you can load up on your gaming pins. So yeah, I think that's the deck for now. You can get more information by saying hi at info@plentina.com. So that's Plentina. That's Plentina in a nutshell. I guess we could discuss lessons learned as well. So I think I'm a techie, and hiring tech in the Philippines is different from hiring tech in the Valley. So I'm coming from Google, and at Google, you kind of take it for granted that there are tens of thousands of resumes coming into the company every day, and hiring is hard, and hiring tech experience is hard in the Philippines and other emerging markets, where the Philippines is yet to see a unicorn in the country. And it's from unicorns and from tech successes that people in the Valley are able to build new companies and hire more techies and develop that talent. And we've got a ways to go in the Philippines. It can take longer. Maybe it means that you're interviewing hundreds of people before you're making your first senior hire. And so the opportunity there is to be able to train the new next generation of your techies, of engineers, of data scientists, of analysts, to build a company, and also present challenges that maybe they're just not used to seeing in other companies and other tech companies in the Philippines, where unfortunately, in some cases, technicians can hold the titles of some engineers in the Philippines. Sometimes I met a new graduate from an information technology program, and I asked them, it's just a different vocabulary. It's a different set of ways to describe the education there. But I'd asked the new grad, what are the programming languages that you learned from your information technology program? And they're like, oh no, I don't program. The hardest part of my day today was being on the phone with an angry customer and trying to calm them down because they work in a call center, and it was just a different way of describing what information technology is in the Philippines. So there's a ways to go before we can equip this new generation with the ability to, say, build a global fintech company that can scale to millions and billions of people. And so we're really proud to have be part of that responsibility of training that new generation. Some realizations for me, who's currently in the San Francisco Bay Area and working in the Philippines, is time management. So no longer a 9 to 5 job in the Pacific time zone, but when you're working with a team, which currently, we got over 20 employees in the Philippines, and working with that time zone, then my quality time that I used to spend with my wife and dog in like in the evening after 9 p.m. is now shifted over to maybe 2 p.m. Instead. So it's a bit of a change there, but totally doable. The pandemic, of course, it made it harder because we can't. It's harder to be there in the Philippines right now, but we just do a lot more of those video conferencing events. But other things here. Just checking my notes. So data readiness. When working with merchants in the Philippines, then the technology, the readiness to collect, to analyze, to turn value from data, he still has a long ways to go. So we work with a lot of merchants, and working with Plentina is part of their digital transformation solution. That if they don't have that ability, then they can work with someone like Plentina that can drive that value for them. So we're still learning how we can drive more value for our customers. And I think the pandemic as well, getting licensing in the Philippines during a pandemic was much harder, especially when government offices were just completely empty at times, literally empty of people. And what was expected to take maybe a month or so to get our lending license ended up being closer to a 6 to 8 month process for us. So, the fundraising and the forecasting of that runway was quite different from what we expected. We were able to squeeze it out, but not something that we originally anticipated. But glad to be alive and well, and growing really fast these days. So, thanks again.
Thanks, Kevin. Awesome. Sorry, Siri just came on. Awesome recap of Plentina. I'm glad you guys are doing amazing. Congrats on that growth, man. 20,000 in a month. That's excellent in any standard. All right. So I guess this is the fun part. Hopefully, folks have some questions about starting a business in the Philippines or running a business in the Philippines from the U.S. I guess I can ask Shane to open it up for questions. Happy to turn everybody's mic on. If you guys just want to shout it out there, we can get started. I have a couple questions if no one's raising their hand yet, just to get things started. Okay. All right. So first question for the guys. Let's see. In the Philippines, there are a lot of times where you have to kind of go to the version of the DMV in the Philippines, right? The LTO, right? You have to stand in certain government areas and things like that, right? To wait for permits. So I guess, Kevin, how did you handle doing that, being that you were here? How did you handle running those operational tasks in the Philippines while you were in the U.S.?
I got lucky in that the pandemic had not yet hit. It was just about to. And so I was in my last hours of my Philippines trip when there was I'm forgetting the name of the licensure, but I needed to go to a government office in order to sign off and get the processing done, and then receive a physical certificate and have it delivered to legal counsel. And so, I just showed up, crazy early to the office and physically got that done that day over some frantic grab drives over NCR in the span of a couple days. So that was my first introduction to the lines and waiting there. But since then we've established a strong team in the Philippines. We have a general manager in the Philippines, got board resolutions that provide the legal authority for a local team to be able to sign off on certain things. For the other things, then we have to go through the apostille process of authenticating documents in the United States and sending them over. And that's a long process. You notarize, you apostille, and it'll probably add about a month to any of the documents that you want done, but that's how we're doing it.
Awesome. So you're lucky enough to have been there and run the documentation and paperwork there. So now you can have a current team that runs it for you, right?
Yes.
Very cool.
Luckily.
Yeah. Very cool. So since I started 8 years ago, I was there a lot to do all of the initial setups until I learned, I'm like, I probably should have a team to do this stuff, right? So for Ray, it's different, right? Because Ray was here in the U.S. and then moved to the Philippines. So what were the challenges of, all of a sudden it's no longer the same, right? How did you handle that? How did you handle that?
Yeah, it's cool to hear your stories, and I can feel your pain in the line, waiting in lines, and it's just adjusting to like what would happen in like a day or a month will take like 5 times that amount, and just adjusting expectations. I mean, hopefully someday it's as fast and we can leapfrog over all these hurdles. But I think, right now, hiring a good team. I loved your both of your explanation or your tips, and I think that's been really key to us. Like, we're slowly hiring more admin now that we're making some more profits, and I think that's the most important part is the hiring and finding people that do a great job.
Very cool.
Yeah, I think we have one hand raised.
Well, go for it, Ray, if you want to read the question.
Well, I think it's from Ely.
Sorry, I don't know if you can hear me, guys.
Yes.
Oh, that's
We can hear
good.
you.
I think you can type your question. I did not see that. Yeah. So,
No, happy to have you on.
yeah. So basically, I own a very, very new handbag business, and it's Italian leather, and it's made in New York. But obviously, manufacturing in the U.S. is very expensive. So, since I am from the Philippines originally, and the quality of the products there are really good, I just don't know how to start with sourcing, because obviously I know there are a lot of leather goods around that area in Manila, but I don't know if there is a database I can go to, or any support from the government, anybody I can contact to say these are like the legit manufacturers that you can go for sourcing and those type of things in the future.
Ray, if you want to take a shot at that, I have some answers. I have some opinions on that, but I think you're the closest.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Manufacturing, yeah.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Ely. Is that right? I have your.
It's Ellie, yeah, Ellie.
Ellie, okay. Yeah, thank you, Ellie. I think the Department of Trade and Industry, I think, would be the first place I would go to ask that question, because they do have kind of a database, hopefully. We've had a great relationship with them, and I think I'm not actually sure where leather goods come from in the country, but for bamboo, speaking from us, there's like national councils, and I'm sure there must be like some sort of leather processing plant somewhere.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah. What kind of leather is it?
It's a cowhide. It's Italian leather. Yeah, actually it's very funny, because it's not the material that's expensive, so I'm not worried about that. But the cost of the labor in the US is more than the cost of the leather. So if I can bring my leather to the Philippines and then have them make it for me, that would be like, I think a better idea.
Yeah, I would start with the Department of Trade and Industry. Yeah, JR, do you have anything?
Yeah, so exactly, right. So when we had questions about processes and connections in the Philippines, what was really nice about being a PhilPro alumni is we do work directly with the Department of Trade, Department of Foreign Affairs, right? So if we can get your email somehow, we will be very happy to connect you to the New York office. I actually see Mr. Hyman Ascalon from the Philippine Embassy on the call. So he's
Hi, Jaime.
also a real.
Okay.
He's a
I can
very
just
good.
type it in on here, right? I can
Yeah,
just type
if
it
you
in.
want to type it now, maybe Shane can copy it, and then our action item will be to make sure we connect Ellie with DTI in New York, right? And you're in New York, right, Ellie?
Yeah, I am in New York. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so that's really I think that's really the first step, right? Is getting the people. These are the locations, and second, so after you have the general information, it would be nice to maybe check with the network also. We'll see if there's anybody
Mhm.
that's familiar with manufacturing in the
Yeah,
Philippines, right? Because the second half of that is being able to actually talk to somebody that's on the ground, that's running around now and
exactly.
doing manufacturing deals, right? So
Yeah.
we're PhilPro's in the ninth year. There's like 80 or 90 alumni. There's got to be somebody in the group that can connect you with the right person that's familiar
Yeah.
with manufacturing.
I think that would be great for me, but that's also great opportunity for our people there. Just because I don't know anybody who makes leather goods that they export right now from the Philippines. I know a lot of those native products that we do, but not specifically leather. So if we can bring that to them, that would be a good opportunity for me. It's gonna cut my cost. I can bring my product, price lower. So yeah.
Absolutely. Kevin, anything you want to add to that?
I think that JR is one of the best people to ask that question to. So
Yeah.
spot
All right.
on.
All right, cool. It sounds good.
And JR,
Sounds
are
good.
you sitting in the consulate right now?
The consulate building.
The consulate building.
But we're in our third floor office for
Yes.
the co-working space. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So I'm actually in one of the corner quiet offices because it's being rented out for a financial conference today, which is great. There's
Sweet.
people are like, coming back to the world, right? It's cool. Very cool. Thanks, Ellie. Appreciate it. Were we able to get your email?
Yeah, I typed it in. I think
Great. Shane, did you
Jane
get
just
it?
responded, yeah. Yeah, should get it.
Shane, did you get it? If
Yeah, it
not,
looks like Jaime got it too. So
Yeah.
got it. Okay, perfect.
yeah, yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you
Awesome.
guys. That's very helpful.
Awesome. I will just copy paste it too, just so we don't forget our site to connect you with others. Okay, cool. Okay, any great question. Thank you so much. Any other questions? Any next question?
Yeah, it looks like Lizelle has a question here. I can go ahead and read it.
Go for it.
Okay, so, it's on the screen now. There can be a lot of cultural nuances, differences between outsourced Philippine employees and clients' employers here in the US. What type of training do most Philippine employees go through to close the gap? That's a good question for you guys.
Yeah.
We're totally processing because this
Yeah,
is what happens all the time.
I'm thinking about the training that I needed to go through in order to close the gap with Plentina's employees, and so I think one challenge is being able to have people very comfortably express any thoughts, feelings, concerns, ideas they might have about the company, and encourage them to share these ideas. And compared to an American culture that might otherwise just more directly just tell you what's on their mind, it's been a bit more of a a gentler approach, read more between the lines in order to evoke those thoughts and feelings, and get people comfortable to share as one culture observation, something that I continue to work on with our team.
Very cool. On our side, so I was lucky enough to have been able to visit the Philippines a lot before I started Panalo, and so I'm very familiar with the culture in the Philippines, and differences in culture here, because I grew up here in San Francisco in California. So it's so interesting enough, even though the culture is very different, sometimes it's also, there's a lot of similarities, right? So when we look for folks and we're interviewing people, there's definitely that we're looking for folks that kind of understand the culture, and you'll be surprised, most people understand the culture. It's just that during the conversations and during the training sessions, we talk a little bit about culture shifts, right? There are certain things that are cultural that are accepted in the Philippines that are slightly different here, but it's different enough that it makes a difference for the clients, right? So one example would be, it doesn't happen so much anymore, but before, we would have a call center agent who's supporting somebody on the phone, and they would just say yes, 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 we can do it, yes, yes, yes. So it seemed like we saw that a lot. We were seeing that agents and project managers were saying yes to a lot of things, where here we're trained to push back, right? We're trained to say, well, no, we don't think we can make that deadline. That's not a realistic request, right? So that's one example of, I think, a difference in culture that exists. I don't know if it exists now, but that's one of the things that we went through a while back. So what we would do is we would say, okay, here's a culture shift, or here's a culture differential. So we would hit that head on and say, okay, when you experience this is how the expectations for working for a U.S. company or U.S. based clients, the expectation is to react this specific way. Right. So I think that we made that just part of our daily, like as Ray was saying, communication, right? We made that part of our daily communication, our daily training. There are companies that provide, 30 months of training before going into the field, right? There are companies that provide accent training. There are companies that provide exactly what you were talking about, Lizelle, that spend time doing that before you actually go into the field. We kind of do it on the fly with live clients. So. Cool. Ray, anything to add to that?
I think you guys hit it, but what I really loved in Kevin's presentation was his hiring story, hiring tech, how it's hard, and that sometimes you just need to be ready to train the next generation. And I think with a client collective, we had a lot of people who had bamboo knowledge in our area, but we started from scratch basically with hiring unskilled people, and it was a lot of on-the-job training. Yeah, just like what you say, open communication, and realizing that we're all learning together, like and reframing mistakes to lessons learned, and like making it easy to bring up stuff if you don't know something. So I think, yeah, just growing together. I think having that mindset, then you're like the all-knowing person in the room, and like whatever you say it goes. But I think it's more of a collaborative effort.
So just speaking of collaborative effort, shout out to PhilPro. Lizelle, I know, is on the call. When we started our business, I don't know, we definitely didn't have this kind of cohort that we can talk to and share our challenges and experiences, right? So yeah, for those that please let people know that PhilPro exists, and that it's just a great resource for young Filipino Americans that are doing business as well. Any other questions for the folks on for the speakers? I have one question for Ray, and also Kevin, while other folks are trying to type in. So again, folks are, you guys are from the US, moved to the Philippines, or opened a business in the Philippines. The culture is different. How did you learn your acquisition strategy, right? How did you learn how to sell in a different country when, it's slightly different, right? How did you learn to promote your products and how to promote your products in another culture? Maybe Ray, go first.
Okay. Yeah, I can take a stab at it. So yeah, I think that these are two different sets of experiences, and proposing a new product that could be very different from the traditional models of like, hey, we can de-risk loans by using apps. Could be alien, and sometimes feel crazy to people that are trying to you're trying to get to buy into the idea. And it goes both ways, like pitching to the United States investors about Philippine concepts and products. You burn some time overhead just trying to define what is the Philippines to them. So I walked into an investment team meeting, and like, okay, Philippines, emerging markets. Yeah, we know emerging markets. I visited Argentina once, and we'll be like, yeah, it's a little different. And so Philippines, here it is, and they'll be like, the Philippines, yeah, well, that's a small country, right? So what other small countries are you going to be working in? Like, no, it's actually one of the world's largest countries. Like, if you ranked the 200 countries of the world, it's the 13th largest country, and they'll be like, wow, that's different from what we expected. Like, and then they'll still have challenges as to like telling the difference between Southeast Asia and South Asia, and they're like, yeah, I'm not sure if there's a difference yet, but I promise you, yeah, there's a big difference between entire regions of the world. But yeah, in the Philippines as well, I think explaining some of the investment mechanics that are like we hold as pretty standard and traditional in the Valley in the United States. I think a number of the investment terms are set in the Y Combinator safe documents for investment, which are not the terms that Philippine investors are used to. They might be used to taking a larger cut of the company. Maybe they're used to customizing the deal, and customization of the deal can just make things very difficult for entire sets of investors from working with investors in the United States as well. So explaining to them what are some of the standard investment mechanics can make it more comfortable for them, because if you're going into a high stakes investment, a large investment, without really understanding what it is you're getting into, then you'll be very apprehensive about entering the deal. And so it just takes a little bit more time to explain both directions how things typically work.
Ray, it'd be great to hear about your experience in the bamboo industry there.
Oh yeah, sure. So, the difference in or how we our acquisition strategy from a different culture. Yeah. So I'm an architect, and this business is totally different from what I was doing in the U.S. So definitely have learned a lot about how to go about. And I guess most of our early adopters are the people who are already convinced about bamboo and its great properties. And there's lots of resorts here too, so they've been helping us keep our business running during the pandemic. But I think when you guys were also presenting, a big point was finding the right partners and finding advisors, and that I guess that community, like this PhilPro community, has been really great, because I mean, without Base Baha'i, our partner, we wouldn't have been able to have that runway to get other customers. So I think that was our major thing, was that we already had an ongoing order and customer from the very beginning, from day one. And I think once people see that customer ordering large volumes and kind of keeping the business going, I think it's a lot easier to bring people in and show people our product, or be able to like create something beautiful and send it out, and people ask about it. And I think we still have a lot to learn with that regard, because bamboo is kind of an underdog in the construction industry as it is. So I think we're open to suggestions still. I think I'd love we need a board of advisors and board members for us to kind of reach the next level. So, and I guess in general, manufacturing in the Philippines has a lot to offer. There's so many unique products and really beautiful things that are being done. So I think the tech, merging the tech and kind of our worlds would be kind of a great thing, because that's the only way we can reach
That's
customers.
awesome. That's an awesome idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd love to continue conversations after this to like see maybe how we can collaborate. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool.
Okay, cool. So we're at an hour. I think if we don't have any more questions, maybe just one more question from the group, or from the people in session. All right. Well, okay. So I want to thank the panelists, Ray, JR, and Kevin, for being on the PhilProCon 2021.
JR, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, JR.
Awesome job as usual.
Well, just trying to do the hosting thing, right? So okay, so that works. PhilProCon 2021. Shout out again to Luella and Lizelle and the whole team at PhilPro. I speak for Ray and Kevin that we feel very lucky. I think all our businesses, really are directly connected to our PhilPro experiences, right? And the people that we know there. So again, thank you very much. And I think there's a lot of other events. So if you guys want to just jump on there. Oh yeah, my marketing just jumped in. Jump on the rest of the other calls. Ray, we'll email you, man.
I'm sorry?
We'll email you. Let's talk more about the tech and bamboo. Tech bamboo.
Yeah.
Tech boo. All right.
Tech boo.
Thanks, guys.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks. Later.
Okay.
See ya.